to meet you all today. Just to reflect on what Arul and Christine has already said about introducing this very, very interesting workshop today. It's really, really good to have so many people in the room to talk about sustainability and to talk about actual outcomes that we can look at to have a serious effect on food systems in Ireland and internationally. So it's really, really good to have this today. And it is my pleasure to introduce an absolute leader in the field of marine biotechnology and seaweed research, being Dr. Stefan Cran. Dr. Stefan's journey has begun with a PhD from National University of Ireland, Galway, where his research focused on phylogenetics and aquaculture of edible seaweeds. In 2001, in parallel to his PhD, Dr. Stefan took on the role of manager for the Irish Seaweed Industry Organisation and established the Irish Seaweed Centre, a first of its kind research hub for seaweed-based research in Ireland, which was extremely important at the time. After 10 years of leadership, Dr. Stephen also founded Ocean Harvest Technology Limited to unlock the potential of seaweeds in functional foods, for aquaculture, and even for biofuel production, which is a major concern to us today. 8 years later, Dr. Stephen co-founded the Seaweed Company, a global leader in seaweed value chain, with operations stretching from Ireland, India, Morocco, and as far away as Greenland. Dr. Stephen has also shaped global discussion on seaweed role and sustainability, serving as the president of the International Seaweed Association. And today he's helping 14 Indonesian seaweed companies expand into European markets as part of a Dutch government initiative. Dr. Stephen's expertise spans aquaculture, sustainable development, biotechnology, and the industrial applications of seaweed. Few people have had such a lasting and diverse impact in both academia and commercial spheres. Without further ado, it's my great honour to welcome Dr. Stephen to give his keynote talk. And if you can please share your screen and then begin, it's great to have you here today.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. That was a very extensive introduction, and I get way more credit than I'm due, I think. But anyway, thanks, Aru, for the invitation and for Dublin City University to organize this workshop. I'm actually sitting in Jakarta at the moment, doing my work with Indonesian seaweed companies and the government here, all about sustainability, CSR, new certification to get the supply chain up in order so that they can export to Europe and the States. So that is part of my work. So I'll start my presentation. Let's see if that all now works. Oh, it's still disabled to share for me. So I can't share my screen.
So is there any option that you can request? Like I have enabled everything here, so it should be working.
Well, if I click on share screen, it said host has disabled. There we go. Now let's see. There we go. Share. Just tell me if you can see this.
Well, yes, it is visible.
Okay, very good. Then I'll start without further ado. So Aru asked me to tell something on the business perspective of seaweed cultivation, but also talk about protein. So I put everything together with seaweeds as a sustainable source for future foods.
Please make your full view.
Well, it is on full screen for me at the moment. I just made it full screen.
Sorry, Dr. Stephen, you might have to just select the presentation screen rather than the full mode screen, possibly. Zoom.
Oh, okay. So this is the normal where I have the PowerPoint screen, not full presentation.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, if you can press the presentation button, then you should be able to share. You should be able to
share.
Yeah,
I did that already, but for me it is full presentation, but for you it didn't. Is it now in full presentation?
No. Now we couldn't see anything, sir. So you can press the share button and then you can select the screen, entire screen. There is an option. Maybe that way it will work.
Well, hang on. because this is the only thing I can do. The PowerPoint to bring it in full screen mode. That is now on my screen, but you don't see anything.
No,
No. I think redo it once again.
Yeah, this is the fourth time that I'm trying to do this now. And you see the small screen?
No, sir, absolutely. Only your video we can see.
Okay, well, I just start again then. Hang on. Sorry about this, but
No worries.
do you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see the presentation, but
Okay,
still it's
now we go to full screen mode.
Yeah.
Do you see the full screen mode?
No. But anyway, I think we can move her. It's okay, I guess. It's visible.
It's visible. Okay. Well, then, and I do it at the smaller in the PowerPoint then, because
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to do what it wants to do.
Yes.
So I'll just set the scene first, because if you look at agriculture, not only in Ireland but globally, it's basically destabilizing our earth system, and especially if you look at water use, biochemical flows, nitrates and phosphates, land use, CO2 emissions, methane especially. It's creating a big problem for us, and if we continue the way as business as usual, we are heading for problems. And especially if you look at meat production, that is the biggest issue from greenhouse gas emissions, and especially beef, as you see in the picture on the right. Beef is by far the worst in emissions, in land use, freshwater use, and feed use. The other ones are slightly better, fish the best, but then you have seaweed that only actually has a very small footprint in greenhouse gas emissions. So why have we as a company chosen seaweed? Well, we are an impact company, environmental and social impact. That is why we set up the Seaweed company at the time. And why focus on seaweed? Well, first of all, I had 30 years experience in seaweed, but seaweed is also one of the fast growing biomasses in the world. It's actually what Aru listed in the beginning on his little note there. No use for land, no fresh water, no fertilizers, no pesticides, but seaweed cultivation still has a footprint. And we have started the calculations, at least for Ireland, and looking at the fuel use, the boat use, labor, and all these kind of things that you use for farming, you need to grow about 10 kilos of seaweed, or in this case, Alaria or Saccharina, per meter of rope to become carbon neutral. Anything that you produce more, then you start to be carbon negative. That is a very important thing to note. And of course, it can help then, especially to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, if you use the seaweed in our food system to replace certain ingredients that has a very high CO2 footprint. Now, as a company, we cultivate mainly the one at the top, Alaria, and that's specifically for food. We do this in Clew Bay and in Moray Bay in Ireland. But we also cultivate, for example, in India, in Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Lakshadweep. And then in Morocco, we have more a harvesting operation, and Greenland actually we stopped because logistically that is a complete nightmare. And the other species that you see printed here is things that we now and then use in food development, product development, etc., etc. So basically, we are a company that's vertically integrated. So we cultivate our seaweed, we process it, and then we use it in food products. Now, we do not make the food products ourselves. We do that with other companies, but we supply, of course, the raw material or the biomass. Now, to go on this journey, it was a very long journey of cultivation and innovation, because seaweed farming is not easy. And we have gone through many failures, many mistakes in the development to automate the whole process, to make automatic seeders, harvesters. It's not an easy path, I can tell you. And here you see some pictures of different things that we trialed, and this is an automatic long line seeder where we immediately seed the seed on the line instead of growing it in a hatchery and then try to grow it up on a twine and then wrap it around a long line. And that actually worked quite well, I must say. We also use nets to grow on in certain cases, depending on the site conditions. It works well. So there's so many things that you have to look at for failure or success. Also on the processing, you see in the beginning we were processing or cutting the seaweed with hedge streamers. And then we moved to a more automated system. In the beginning, we dried in an open field on a line. We just put the whole line in the field and let it dry in the wind. We moved from that to container drying. And finally, this year, we opened our official facility in Downings in Donegal, which is a new automated processing plant. And we did this, of course, with the help of UDRAS and BIM. And the official opening was in April this year. Downings itself, and just to illustrate, Ireland, Donegal, in the top corner right of the picture, and then where we are with the factory, and our farm is the little blue block, and we hope to extend that next year as well in double the size. But we chose this place and this situation because it is literally 7-8 kilometers away as the crow flies. So bringing your crop to the processing facility is a very short journey, because too many people start with seaweed farming, have not looked at any other things around it, and then they have a crop and then they think, oh, what am I going to do with this? Who is going to buy this? Where do I going to process this? So all these things you have to address before you even think of seaweed farming to make it at least profitable. So if you start this route or this business, you have to be in for the long haul.
Sorry, Dr. Stephen, you were. Sorry, Dr. Stephen, your mic is muted, please.
Yeah, I got a notification that this was recorded and then everything stopped again.
No worries.
Can you still see my presentation?
No.
No. Okay. There we go again.
Yeah.
You see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So
maybe with the previous slide, please.
The previous slide. Okay. I was talking about becoming profitable in seaweed farming.
Yeah.
So site location, site specific, or site assessment that you have to do. The logistics, you need your business model. And what I said, over the last 5 years, we've made many failures, mistakes, and wrong turns. But we stuck at it, and in the end, that will lead to a positive result. But you have to do your homework, basically. So then we move from farming to the protein transition, and this is also to do with goal 2, the SDGs, zero hunger. If you look currently at our agriculture and the food we eat and the protein we take in, it's mainly based on animal protein. So we have to start rebalancing this with protein from alternative diets. So if we can do that, then we really have a solution to mitigate the harmful effects of cattle production on the environment. But it also straight away introduces then a healthier diet, because we step away from animal protein to plant sources. And if we can do that, it will basically transform, of course, the way we produce food, but also how we start to farm animals for what purpose, and how we use the protein from there. And that will seen as a movement towards sustainability, first of all, but also an equitable and balanced protein system. This is, of course, a problem if it's not in presentation mode. I might just move it out of the way. Of course, that doesn't work. Sorry. So if we manage to do this, to step away from animal to plant protein sources, we can knock off about 14 to 20% of our emissions mitigation, which the world needs up to 2050 to stay at that 1.5 degree for the Paris Agreement that we agreed upon. And that equates to about 10 to 14 gigatonnes of CO2 equivalents per year in emission compared if we do nothing. And if we do this, then it will also accelerate nature climate solutions, because not only do you step away from animal production, you suddenly have much more land available, where first were the cows, now you can actually plant trees or do other conservation and climate focused land management. And this little graph was just to show you that we are currently on the red line. And the red line leads to 4 to 5 degrees temperature increase if we don't do anything. We currently produce about 41 gigatonnes of CO2, and we have to change that. And if we don't, well, what I said, more extreme weather events, more problems, more crop failures, etc., etc. So that will land us in trouble. In other words, we do have to do something. Then part of where we focus upon as a business is the move from reducing meat intake. Now, if you look at vegetarians, that is only a very small part of the population. And if you want to make another seaweed burger, that's not going to make a difference, because it is there with other plant-based burgers, and it is only less than 5% of the population. Most people eat meat, and they will not give up eating meat. So how do you make impact? Well, if you replace the meat just with a plant source, but do it in such a way that the meat eater doesn't even notice that the meat is same taste, same bite, same juiciness. So we're talking about hybrid meat burgers. Then you start to make impact. And small changes can have a really big effect. Just to illustrate, if you look at America, they eat 50 billion burgers a year, which equates to about 3 hamburgers per person per week for every American. And I've also shown the example here for the Netherlands. We just passed the 80 million people now in the Netherlands, but 400 million burgers. So that's about 23 burgers per year. And then if you look at the EU, just under 500 million people, they eat about 10 billion burgers. Now, just imagine if you can replace 25% of all those burgers with seaweed, and the impact that you make with this simple kind of fact. So that is also our mission of the company, to make our food system sustainable and healthy. And we have come up with, and it took years in product development, formulation, to finally get to a product that is acceptable to the consumer, tastes good. They don't know there is seaweed in there, but they eat 25% less meat. And that will help to decarbonize our food chain and our production systems. And to illustrate, if you replace 25% of meat, that is the equivalent of 8 kilos of CO2 equivalents per kilo of meat production, or 1800 liters reduction in water use. Because if you have cows, the amount of water they take, and the crops, maize and wheat that they eat, the amount of water that needs, etc., you can extend the shelf life because of the antioxidants in the product. You can improve the Nutri-Score. Most hamburgers are Nutri-Score D, and you can bring it up to B, and depending on the company that uses it, you can even bring it up to a Nutri-Score A. You reduce land. We do it in such a way that the price is not going to change. So if the consumer goes into the supermarket and he sees 2 burgers, and one has a Nutri-Score of A, the other a D, but they're the same price, yeah, then it's a very easy choice, right? So, and then we have saturated fat reduction and salt reduction. So that is all nutritionally a very good point. So all these kind of effects have effects on not only zero hunger, but a lot of other SDGs. And I'm not going to name them here, but you can see it really has a lot of effect. And just to illustrate some pictures, what we do with them, because now we are in catering, in restaurants, we are in supermarket chains, and it is growing and growing and growing, and people start to realize. But we do not advertise the meat with, say, a seaweed burger or a seaweed meatball. No, it's still a meatball, still a burger, but on the packaging, on the back, it says 25% seaweed. We're not advertising that part because people are very quickly say, oh, seaweed, I don't want to eat that. And again, just to illustrate, because it's not only burgers, it can be sausages. We have done things with fish, with fake fish as well, falafel, many things. But there is an issue. And that is, how do we create a reliable, sustainable, cost-competitive supply of seaweed in the EU? Because currently it's very, 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 very small. Now, we can do that. What we have done in Ireland with our unit, is basically a 600 ton per year production facility of wet seaweed. And we can copy and paste that model of farming design, of the processing facility, the dryer, to other places, first in Ireland, but also to the UK, Scotland, Norway, and France, and maybe even in the North Sea in the Netherlands, because this is the kind of temperate zone where we can grow these kelps. But for that, we have to cooperate. We have to work with other companies, with funding agencies, with DG Mare and EU for Algae, to pull together, try to develop this sector and scale up the seaweed farming in the EU as a whole. And the ultimate goal, of course, and the mission is the protein transition and environmental impact, to use seaweeds to replace meat. And that is where I leave you. I thank you for your attention, and apologies that I can't get this in presentation mode. Must be the Jakarta Kremlins, I think, on the line. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stefan. That was a lovely presentation and very, very insightful. And it's amazing. As us as university researchers, it's wonderful to see research that's actually commercialized and being successful, which is a big step from where a lot of us can be sometimes. I'm just going to ask for anybody to put questions that they require into the Q&A box, and we'll address those with Dr. Stephen now. I have a particular question myself I'd just like to start with, actually.
Sure.
You mentioned the trials and tribulations of setting up sites, and you're looking at setting up production sites in rural Ireland. And I know planning permissions can be tricky, sometimes can be an issue. Did you run into any major issues that if you were doing this again, you'd look at it and you do things differently in terms of getting a plant actually on a rural site?
No, not directly, but I can, for Ireland, definitely recommend team up with UDRAS, for example, if it's a Gaeltacht area, rural Ireland, and otherwise with BIM. There is a lot of help there in facilities that they have, because we lease an old UDRAS facility, for example. So that is how you have to maneuver. On the licensing, of course, it's becoming easier, but we do liaise with DG Mare, but also here with the DAFM as well, and with BIM, to getting licenses for seaweed. And one of the things we try to do, not only for Ireland, but for Europe-wide, is that every mussel farmer is by default allowed to grow seaweed as well. Because there's 2,700 hectares in Ireland available for mussels, which is not in use. So also for a mussel farmer, then it is having two crops on the same site reduces the risk of certain failures.
Okay.
And of course, you have IMTA, so the seaweed grows better on the waste from the mussels as well.
Yeah. Okay, so it's very much sort of a collaborative approach that you're taking to this then, which is...
and that is also my own attitude change. With my first company, I kept everything for myself and didn't want to share too much. And nowadays we say the opposite. We want to have as many people coming in, many farmers, many other companies, because this playing field is enormous if you look at the meat industry.
Yeah. Absolutely. To address a few other questions. So, what do you see in terms of your competition, especially from the dairy industry in Europe, which is huge? How do you see you can deal with that, or what's the scope for the two industries kind of to work within the same space for alternative
Yeah,
protein?
I think more the beef industry, right? Not the dairy.
Well,
Uh,
the dairy industry is producing alternative proteins themselves now, or they're looking at doing it.
yeah, alternative protein from milk, you mean?
Yeah.
But even Lidl now launched last week or 2 weeks ago with their alternative meat, where they have pea protein and other things in burgers as well. It doesn't really matter, and we don't see competition. But the good thing is with seaweed, from a carbon point of view, it's almost carbon neutral, and if you replace something else, you can really make an impact. And other sources have less that benefit because they
Okay.
still use land, they still use pesticides or fertilizer, etc.
Very good.
So I don't see competition in that respect, but there is many sources, and I'm quite happy as long as we make the change. We have to change our behavior. That is basically the point of this whole discussion, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about mindset, it really is.
Yes, exactly.
Another, I think, possibly the last question, I think, from time point of view, but there's a comment here that is there a flavor, is there a sea flavor from the seaweed? And
Eh,
if there is, how do you deal with that?
Yes, of course there is, and that is the product development that I was talking about. By preserving it, for example, acidify it or blanch it, you can get rid of the triamine, so the stuff that gives the fishy smell, say at least. And it's the same thing that if you eat fish and you put lemon juice on your fish, that is the same kind of thing that you do. You remove the smell. And we do the same thing with seaweed. You use citric acid or formic acid, and you can take away the smell, and you preserve it as well. So that helps us with the harvesting and the drying.
Very interesting. I'm going to go for one more question, because there's so many coming in. Do you dry all your seaweed? And when you're talking about the projections of the CO2 capture per ton, is that for dry biomass or wet biomass?
No, it's for dry biomass, and what I said, we dry with LPG, with gas, and that is why I came to the number. You need to grow 10 kilo per meter of line to become carbon neutral. If you then grow more kilos per line, yes, you go into the negative carbon-wise. But if you just use your seaweed to replace a very carbon high element or food ingredient, yeah, you straight away have a bonus there.
Great, great. Okay, well, we'll stop there because we'll have to keep moving. But that was really fantastic, very, very interesting, and personally for myself as well to see transition from research to commercial in the sustainability field is wonderful. So, thank you so much, Dr. Stephen, for that fantastic talk.
You're
And
very welcome, Brian, and you know where to find me.
we'll certainly have a chat.
More or less next door. So.
And if you don't mind having a look at the Q&A section, there's loads of questions coming in. So
I'll do that now.
In your own time, answer that. Now I'm going to hand back to Arul, who's going to